Welcome to There Is No Alternative, a podcast about entrepreneurship, where I talk to founders, investors, and executives in the consumer world. I'm Tina Bou-Saba, founder of CXT Investments, where I invest in consumer brands and technology. I've invested in more than 40 companies over the past decade. Along the way, I've been lucky to meet incredibly talented and resilient leaders who have built great businesses and well-known brands. Entrepreneurship can be deeply rewarding and also extremely challenging. Why do some people choose this path? How are they wired? Are entrepreneurs born or made? And where do they get so much energy? I created this podcast to explore these questions with amazing entrepreneurs and hopefully inspire others who are considering taking that leap. Welcome to There Is No Alternative. I'm Tina Bou-Saba, and today we are joined by Patricia Santos, founder and CEO of Volition Beauty, an innovative creator-led beauty brand. Volition doesn't just work with creators, they built the whole company around them. I've known Patricia for many years, and I've always been impressed by her strategic thinking, brilliance, and drive. Today, we're going to learn about where that comes from and how it led Patricia to create Volition. Hi, Patricia.
Hi, so happy to be here, Tina.
Thank you so much for joining us. Super excited to talk to you. So we're going to start with a warm-up question. What did you have for breakfast this morning?
This is going to be a boring answer. I intermittent fast, so I do not eat breakfast. I don't eat until about noon every day.
How long do you intermittent fast for?
Mostly I'm sleeping, so it's not that hard. So I eat dinner around 6 every night, 6 or 7 every night, and then I fast until about noon or 1 o'clock when I have lunch. And most of it is because I'm just too lazy to make breakfast. It's just like another meal to think about. So I just kind of have black coffee.
Well, it sounds like you have a high pain tolerance.
I guess I would say that, yeah.
Well, we're going to talk more about that. Okay, so you started your career as an investment banker and later as
with
a
you.
Yes, exactly. Together.
Together. Same group, same floor. Not same cubicle, but yes.
Right. That was fun. Well, we learned a lot.
Yes.
You went on to do many amazing things, including a venture capital investor. What drove you to take the risky leap to start Volition Beauty, especially coming from being an investor, a very prestigious job? Was there an aha moment? What drove you?
Yeah, I don't think there was just one aha moment. I think it was probably built up over time. And I would say there were like positive and negative things, right? So on the positive side, I was a venture investor in consumer back in 2005 to 2006. So very, very early days. So I think 20 years ago, right? And this was, and I looked at overall consumer. We did a lot of like apparel, athletic apparel, retail. We didn't do much food. We did some pet. But beauty was always something that was exciting to me. And if you can think back to 2006, this was before Sephora was like a big thing, right? Like women were still shopping on the ground floor of Bloomingdale's and Macy's. Do you remember that?
And no Instagram, none of this.
No Instagram, no nothing. And so, kind of seeing all of that step change happening in the beauty space, and all of these like really inspirational, really amazing founders, indie brand founders kind of come into the scene where the scene wasn't being defined anymore by L'Oreal and Estee Lauder. It was really these like indie brand founders like, Maureen Kelly and all those like very interesting brands. I saw an opportunity for the beauty change, like for the beauty really changing and transforming. And so that was sort of the one of the catalysts that over time I was starting to think about, like, hey, what's going to happen here? Like what's going to happen in beauty? And then I would say probably on the more negative side, I tried to fund and back a lot of these female founders. And I was really excited about the stuff that they were doing, the new formulas, the cleaner ingredients, the really different kind of brands and products they were bringing to market, and they weren't getting funded. And they were, it was so hard to run these deals up the flagpole at my fund. And I was like, I think we're really missing out on an opportunity here to get behind some of these amazing brands and some of these amazing female founders and really own investing in the indie beauty space. And that kind of, that kind of just like was in my head over years and years of investing until finally I was like, okay, I'm gonna go off and see what I can do to solve this problem that's been it's
Mhm.
been bugging me in the back of my mind.
When you were trying to run these potential investments up the chain, do you think that the fact that they were female founded companies and or companies that were largely addressing a female consumer was a significant factor in the challenge in getting the overall like IC on board?
1000%. I think it was a couple of things. One, it was like, every investment that we made needed to be run through the lens of like, oh yeah, let me see if my wife knows that brand. Right.
Yeah.
And so there was not an immediate kind of like just like knowledge, of like the brand and kind of what it stood for. And and beauty is a hard, it's a very crowded space. So I can see how somebody who doesn't spend all of their time really understanding the nuances of branding
Mhm.
can look at it and it's all same. It all sounds the same. I can get that. So it was hard, I think, for the investors to kind of relate, I would say, to the brand and the products that I was talking about and really understand why those brands and products were differentiated. Also, flat out, there was just sexism. I remember
Mhm.
not a beauty entrepreneur, but one of the fashion entrepreneurs that I really wanted to back came to me and after we signed the term sheet and everything, and she's like, hey, like you're the second person to know after my husband, but like I'm pregnant and I just wanted to be upfront with you about it. Like my mom doesn't even know this, but since we signed a term sheet, I want you to know. And honestly, like that made the IC walk away. They were like, she's not going to be able to grow
Yeah.
this business. This is her first child. Who knows? She might quit. I'm like, no, like that's just like not going to happen. She's committed. This is her company. Like, why would this even, kind of be a topic for discussion? But, I think that, 60-year-old men have their own opinions, I think, about how committed a woman can be to a company.
Yeah. It's gosh, it's like it's hard to believe, but of course it's true. It's just it's coming from our perspective, especially because now I feel like having kids, it's like the ultimate lesson in productivity and efficiency.
Also, the absolute need to like get away from
Yes. Well,
home
that's a
and
great
go
point too.
work.
That's a great point too. Exactly. It's like I always feel like I know how to make 30 hours out of 24. And I bet you can make 40.
Exactly. So yeah, no, it was. I just feel like if you and I were on the IC there, we'd be like, oh, that's great. Maybe we
Yeah,
should send her a flower basket, or
exactly.
like, yeah, like, where should we order
So
her a cake? But it was like, no, not sure about this one. And who knows? Again, with the IC and like politics, like you don't know what maybe they were already having cold feet about the investment and they just
mhm.
kind of use this as like the way to kind of walk away or whatever. But I still found it incredibly frustrating, and
Yeah.
then having to turn back and then tell the founder we were walking away at the last minute. Just very, very unpleasant of an experience. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. One, I think you were super early in at back in your venture days was Lululemon, right? If I'm
Yeah.
not mistaken, you guys were one of the early
Yeah.
investors in that one.
Yeah. In fact, like we didn't even have a consumer fund when we did that
Wow.
investment. Because I worked in the healthcare fund. And they hired me because I had a backwards after investment banking. I went work for Polo Ralph Lauren. So I had kind of a retail plus finance experience. And I think when the healthcare team was starting to look at more consumer facing health concepts like the minute clinics and et
Yeah.
cetera, right? They were, the macro theory was that the consumer was trying to own a lot more of their health and their wellness journey. So therefore maybe there are some new interesting concepts that are going to come, out of this. And so minute clinics was like one of them. That we first started looking at. But then, yeah, yoga was also kind of a random wellness, quote unquote, sector that we looked at. And Lulu was the first deal that I did at the fund. And then we ended up IPOing it like 18 months later or something. It was like super fast. Yeah. It was really great. And then off of the back of that was really why they were like, okay, let's go and raise a consumer focused fund outside of the healthcare fund, because this is like a thing that we can get behind. Yeah,
So cool. That must have been really cool to work on and to
it was.
follow the sort of the amazing trajectory, and then obviously a more challenging, recently. So it'll be interesting to see how they navigate that.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So fast forward a few years,
Mhm.
you start ideating on starting a beauty brand. Like, catch me up. How do you get to the early days of thinking about launching or starting Volition?
Yeah, it was well, because I was moving anyway, right? So my husband and I were relocating from Boston to San Francisco. And it was kind of at that time that I was like, okay, well, this is a perfect time for me to explore my entrepreneurial,
Yeah.
ideas and see if there's something there. It was also exacerbated by the fact that like I got pregnant with my first son, and I was like, I don't know how I'm going to be waddling in like,
Mhm.
8 months pregnant into some of these like Silicon Valley venture interviews. Try plus that previous experience with that founder
Yeah,
I talked about,
exactly.
like totally, totally traumatized me about ventures perspective on pregnant women. So I was like, okay, maybe I should just take some time off. And that was around the time. So this was like 2010, right? We were kind of like, okay, I'm pregnant. When you're pregnant, you're kind of like nesting. We were thinking about buying a house. I've told you this story, I think, on some of our like San Francisco walks. And we were like looking around the Bay Area, and we just found everything like super overpriced when like the entire economy had basically cratered, the mortgage crisis and all of that. And like everything in the Bay Area was like still everything in San Francisco and Marin was still super expensive. And so my husband and I kind of cooked up this idea that like maybe we should just, instead of buying our house, like we should look at some investment properties and look at, buying some of these houses that are in foreclosure that are a little bit farther in more of like the commuting cities from San Francisco. So I was like, sure. Let's do that. So I was like, I'm pregnant anyway. Like, let me just like figure this whole real estate thing out. And then we ended up investing a bunch of money in East Bay foreclosure properties. I ended up getting like my broker's license. We would like go into these foreclosed properties. Sometimes the renters were still there. We'd like flip them basically. Sometimes we'd rent them back out to the renters who had these like balloon mortgages and couldn't afford that much higher payment. And yeah, and I basically turned myself into a real estate entrepreneur first. And I think that really sort of like struck a chord with me, where I was like, wait, I could be an entrepreneur. Like I can actually, could have roll up my sleeves. And I was like in Home Depot, like picking carpeting and like, working, and flipping these houses. And I was kind of like, I'm scrappier than I thought I was.
Mhm, mhm.
And I think it was really that.
I love that.
Yeah, it was really that moment where I was like, because, and you have like very similar resume to me. So, like when you go to like Harvard and then Morgan Stanley and then Harvard Business School, it's almost like it's all about like chasing the next sort of name brand to put on your resume.
Yes.
I would say like a lot of my decisions professionally before this whole like, real estate thing were very defined by brand names.
Yeah.
and my need to almost validate myself by having those brand names like on my resume. And I think the real estate thing was really the first time where I was like, yeah, no, I don't. Yeah, I'm buying up foreclosure properties off of the courtroom steps, and it's fun, and I'm making money, and I'm deploying more capital than I did when I was a venture investor. This is good stuff. And
That's
so,
so
yeah,
cool. Yeah.
that was really the first time. It interestingly wasn't a beauty idea that got me
Yeah.
becoming an entrepreneur. It was this, it was the whole mortgage crisis and these foreclosures and this like very small opportunity to basically buy some of these houses at a third of their values, and then even help some of the renters and rent back their homes to them so they didn't have to leave and they didn't have to pull their kids out of school. Um so yeah, that was the really the beginning of like where I said, okay, I can be an entrepreneur. And then after that, I was kind of like, okay, if I could do that, I'm going to start this idea about beauty and funding indie brand founders and getting new products to market without having to go through the VC investment committees. I'm going to go and take a beat and try and figure that out. So that's what started the whole the whole volition
Mhm.
beginning, the beginning of volition.
So, a quick side question, because I feel like someone who's listening to this would be super curious. Do you still own any of the houses that you bought?
Yeah, yeah. We still own many of them. I mean, honestly, like they have been the best investments I've ever made. Some of them are, I mean, because we were buying some of them with full cash. I mean, some of them a lot of them we could lever,
Mhm.
but I mean, yeah, infinite returns on the levered properties,
Yeah.
right? Like, I mean, it was a huge thing. These were properties that they were selling for $500,000, right? This is in the East Bay, so call it like field, kind of near Napa-ish type
Mhm.
properties. $500,000, right? They were foreclosed on, so we were scooping them up for like 150, $200,000 each, sometimes levering them. And then, now they're worth 800, 950,000, right? If not some of them over a million. So yeah. 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 Yeah.
Real
And
estate.
and what's so interesting is that because we were buying homes in really good school districts, that was one of our criteria. Our turnover rate on our renters has been like minimal, basically. Like on some of our properties, like it's still the original renter who stayed there because their
Oh,
kids are in the school.
interesting.
And so
Yeah.
all of that, like the pain, they say like with
Mhm.
real estate investments, it's like the turn and then all, having to put back money. And once the renters leave and managing that whole thing, that hasn't been an issue for us because
Mm.
it was a good sort of thesis of what kind of properties we should buy and where.
Yeah, super interesting. So, I think what I'm getting from this is you have a very strong sense for opportunities, for business opportunities, right? Because
Yeah,
you
I
saw
hope so.
that. And then the next idea that you had was volition.
Mhm.
I want to hear more about the genesis of it and what you saw in the creator space and social media and all of that. So, like, how did you get that idea?
Yeah. So, I think it was, first of all, one of the things I was seeing was that there was so little innovation in the
Mm,
beauty space in the way that a lot of these bigger conglomerates were developing
yeah.
products, right? Because they all did it the same McKinsey way, which is
Mhm.
like you look at what's trending, you pull all the data, right? You look at like, what selling at Sephora,
Yeah.
right? Then you do some Google term, analysis to see what consumers are looking for, although I honestly don't know how much of that was getting done back in like 2010. And then you just sort of like copy it into your line if it fits, right? So they're like, oh, lip balms are trending, like we need a lip balm, right?
Yeah.
Because it's
Yeah.
all because they're all looking at the same trend reports and they're all looking at the same data. And so you can't really come up with something really innovative if you're just all looking at the same stuff,
Right.
right? And all turning
Definitely.
to the same
Definitely.
sources of information. So, so that was one question I asked myself. Like, if I could have a better source of information and something that the other beauty companies weren't looking at, what would it be? And it would, of course, be the consumer. And I feel like, just asking her directly, what would you like us to launch, work on? What are
Hmm.
you looking for? It seemed like just a kind of no-brainer, better way of coming up with product ideas rather than sitting in a closed group of beauty executives looking at data.
Hmm.
So that was like the beginning. And that's why Volition sort of became known as this like crowd-sourced, beauty brand because we generally said, how do we ask the consumer? And then of course the idea of like them voting on it or pre-buying drops of the products that we were looking at to basically get a sense of momentum. That was where that part of the brand and the company came from. And then I would say, looking at some of the beauty bloggers and the growth
Hmm.
of online education from creators about beauty was definitely game changing for the industry, right? Like, I mean, literally back in 2005, right? People were going in and talking to the counter
Right.
person to ask
Totally.
like for
Total
recommendations. Who
gatekeeping.
does that? Who does that
No,
now? Like nobody does that now. It's all about like going online, reading
exactly.
reviews, figuring out like, looking at demos, looking at, product applications and all of that. So, idea that creators could really drive the product development and product innovation process with their new platforms was something that kind of I was also seeing, in the change of how the beauty consumer was shopping and educating herself about products. So that's how basically Volition got started, where we collaborate with a creator. We do collections with them, so they'll come to us and say, oh, all of my community has been asking about like X, Y, and Z and how I do this or whatever. Or like, I'm a dermatologist and my patients come in and they ask, they all have these these skin issues, so I would like to come up with a collection to address that. And then their drops, their product ideas basically get pre-bought by their community. Right. So that way we know, oh, okay, they actually do want that, or like that. Yeah, we hit the nail on the head there. We got the product positioning right. This is what they're looking for. These are the ingredients that they want in it. These are the benefits that they want from the product. And then those are the products that those winners
Hmm.
are the ones that we actually sell on our website as having been vetted by our process.
Yeah. What I think is so interesting is, and this goes back to like my observation around your strong intuition for business opportunities. You guys were very early in seeing what was happening in the creator space, because I think that, obviously today, like if you're a beauty brand, you're building relationships with influencers, creators of different sizes, right? To market your product, But you guys were like half a dozen years ahead in seeing, right, where the world was going, right, and the important role that they would have in the both the product development and then like the selling, the marketing strategy for in the beauty space.
Yeah. And you know what? I actually I think we're still early.
That's interesting. Tell me
I'll
more
be
about
I
that.
I'll be honest, because, like, I think right now where I see the creator space going is that, like, for some of these creators, it's incredibly tiring to constantly create all of this content and serve the algorithm and then
Yeah.
deal with all of the changes of platforms. First it's
Mhm.
Instagram, YouTube, now it's TikTok, and like, all this stuff, and make those transitions smoothly with in your career. But I still think it's incredibly lucrative, right? So I
Yeah.
think there's a lot of creators out there creating content for brands, doing brand partnerships and getting free stuff and like having fun and all that. Whereas partnering with us is a little bit more complicated because you're actually putting your name on a product, right? And you're really inking a deal where you're co-developing a
Hmm.
product with us, not just me handing you a serum and say, hey, create good
Yeah.
content to sell that serum. So there's only really like, I wouldn't say like what we do currently appeals to the majority of creators, right? Because it's a lot more work than just creating content. And it's a lot more of yourself on the line by creating content. And to a certain extent, you might be alienating some of your
Hmm.
sponsors, right? Because if you go out and you create like, a body product, that might end some of the
Hmm.
body brands that come to you and say, hey, can you do this? Because you don't want to basically oversell
Yeah.
and compete with your own product. Yeah, there are some creators who are like, yeah, it's just not a right fit for them, right? But I do think that eventually, like as creating all of this content gets so much more demanding, and as the space gets so
Yeah.
much more crowded, a lot of creators are going to be like, you know what? I have a nice, loyal audience. I have a great community. I have a great brand. I have a great persona and world that I've built. And I deserve to make money while I sleep, not just because I'm like on camera 24/7.
Right.
And
Yeah.
that's what doing a collab with us does for you. You're basically stamping your name and your brand onto a product that sells, independent of you and independent of your content. Of course, you have to do it, you have to do content from time to time, but where you're getting commissions and rev shares and equity for that business. So it's like true entrepreneurship outside of content creation. But I don't think a lot of creators have like gone there yet.
So
I'm hoping
yeah.
they will, but yeah, but I think it's only been a small percentage.
That is so, oh gosh, that's so interesting. Okay, well, let's talk about a particular recent example. So, an influencer named Bram T. Juliette, and you co-developed a blue spirulina body oil. Did I did
Yeah.
I pronounce her name right?
Bram tea, yes, and it's spirulina. Yeah, the
Spirulina. Okay,
algae. Yeah, yeah.
spirulina. Okay, so this is like I feel like this is such an interesting example because like, and I'm in the beauty space. I didn't know who this person is, but I bet she has million plus followers,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
So,
yeah,
like,
yeah.
tell me
Millions.
about
Yeah.
her. Right, millions. Who is she? Which is, but that's like the beauty of what's going on right now, right? Whereas, like, you can have people who are super well known within this not niche, but like specific community, and some people don't even know who they are, and I'm only one, one click away. So, tell me about her. Like, how did that, how did that come to be, right? How did Volition get connected to her? And we'd love to hear more about that project.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So interestingly, Brampty was one of our first TikTok creators who we
Interesting.
because we were so focused on Instagram because beauty brands are strong on Instagram
Yeah.
just in terms of marketing and brand building. So we've always been historically strong on Instagram and have really like put a lot of effort
Yeah.
into building our community there. A lot of the innovators, those are the women who create the products with us. A lot of our innovators came from Instagram. So just from, us working on that platform. And then when TikTok hit the scene, we were kind of like, it's going to sell stuff. Like, we're not sure. Like, this is a bunch of
Yeah.
dancing and like, Instagram was a lot more about like branding stuff. But Brampty came to us, got introduced to us, and she was just instantly she checked all of the boxes of like what has been successful for us in the past, which is that her content was truly like, you know, she was truly like a key opinion leader. She wasn't just, when you
Mhm.
think about like
Yeah.
an influencer, you're like, okay, they sell Amazon stuff or like they sell like a niche sort of type of product and content. Whereas Brampty was like just so open and
Mhm.
likable, and her content was just rich. Like, I know
Yeah.
that's not
Yeah.
like a great
Totally.
description, but it was just rich and interesting in so many ways. So, and then when she came to us with the idea, she was also one of those very rare creators who just knew exactly what she wanted to make, because she had been listening all this time to
Yeah.
her followers asking her about, what she uses for this and what she would recommend for that. And so we love those two combination of things when their content has a true POV, but also
Yes.
is very
Yes.
like rich and diversified. And when the creator themselves is like truly an entrepreneur, truly tapped into their following and knows exactly what they want to create with us. And we just bring all the chemistry and formulation expertise, the regulatory knowledge, the sort of
Hmm.
industry and competitive perspective. But if they are very pointed in what they want to create, that's always a good sign for us that they
Hmm.
will sell well. Yeah. So she came to us and she said, "Yeah, I want to create a body oil. I already know what the scent, is going to be. I want to put blue
Cool.
spirulina in
Yeah.
it because it has." She like wrote this whole memorandum about like all of the benefits of this algae. I mean, just so researched, so knowledgeable, and yeah, just a truly a awesome innovator to work with.
Yeah. So so it sounds like when you and your team met her, you felt like it's like she's got it. She's got the it factor. What have you learned? What have you guys learned in with respect to that it factor and which innovators, creators can actually sell product?
Yeah, yeah. No, it's tough, and I wouldn't by any stretch of the imagination to say we have like the answer
Yeah.
and the exact formula for it. But I would say there's like, a few things we look for, right? And the first one is, of course, it's very basic. It's like, what does their following look like, right? Is it actually like a beauty consumer, right? Because there's so many people out there who are like 10 million of followers, but like they're not women in the US between the ages of like,
That's
18 and
interesting.
30,
Yeah.
like so there's the demographic, the basic demographic and psychographic question of like not necessarily like will this creator convert, will they convert in beauty products?
Yep. Okay.
Right, like,
Yeah, that makes sense.
specifically. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So there's sort of the whole, like, data, I would call it, like, the data exercise that, like, needs to happen, and that's very simple. Secondly, I would say, is what I talked about with, like, Bramty and what we've seen with a lot of our other successful innovators, where it's about, like, lifestyle, where you're not just tuning into them specifically because of their gym, or fitness regimen. You're really tuning into them because you want to know what their life is like and they're happy to share it with you, right? And they're happy to talk about, going to the eye doctor or like getting,
Yes.
and they
Yes.
just turn on their camera and they just create content about it. They just talk to you about it. And people like that content where it's
Yeah.
very well rounded and very rich, right? And I would say that leads to, I think, the third driver of conversion, which is truly having the permission of your following to sell something,
Mhm.
right? Because, like, I think that there are a lot of influencers out there who people like look up to and they follow, for certain reasons. But if they tried to sell something to you, you'd be like, no,
Right.
you know
Yeah.
because you don't follow them for that. But there are certain influencers who are so creators who are so like real, I think, and they basically they have the permission. So when they say, hey, like, this is what I use, hey, this is what,
Mm,
this is what you should buy, people listen.
so
It's
interesting, and
permission.
totally. Your point around, like, people it is amazing, right? Like, today, creators, like right, turn on the camera, going to the grocery store, going to the eye doctor, right? It's kinda wild, but you also make a good point that it is an enormous amount of work.
Oh, it's so much work. It's like they're constantly thinking about new content. They're
Mm,
constantly Wow, I don't know. I don't actually know how some creators do it without teams and teams of people
yeah.
basically doing it for them.
Yeah.
And some of them do it all on their own. I mean, truly
Yeah.
tiring exercise.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. Okay. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about your business and kind of what your I'd love to understand like what your job, what your day-to-day looks like as the CEO of Volition. Give us a sense of like what are you doing all day besides being on my podcast?
Besides being on your podcast. So interestingly enough, like my day to day is not Volition, like not Volition the brand 100%, because I have just amazing people on my team
Mhm.
who, do all of the products, do all of the marketing, do all of the connections with the creators and all of that. So really kudos to them, because I can kind of step back from the day to day management
Mm.
of Volition, the brand. But building Volition, the brand, it was this platform where we co-developed these products with creators, basically led to our quieter but bigger white label business, our B2B business, which we call creator brands, where we partner with already existing brands or much bigger talent who want to start their own brands. And we are their platform, kind of back end,
Yeah.
operations team
Yeah.
that makes it happen. So we don't talk too much about that, because for the brands that we work with there, it's really about their brand, not
Yes.
us. We're silent back end. But that takes a lot of my time, because we do work with some pretty big brands and pretty big celebrities and creators
Mm.
through that part of the business. But basically, in a sense, the two businesses are very interrelated, because creator brands basically leverages the infrastructure that we built for Volition, the supply networks, the supplier leverage, right? The team, and all of that, basically, to support these other brands and incubate
Yep.
some of the newer celebrity
I mean, it
brands.
makes total sense because, like, if you're a creator, and let's say, as you said, you're bigger, you have a bigger following. Your superpower is that forward facing, community building, right? Content creation piece of it. It's not in the more operational side where Volition has developed, tremendous expertise over a decade, right? Of making products, of driving innovation, and all those like really important pieces. So it's, I mean, it seems like a makes total sense.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, no, absolutely. And I think, and we've talked about this before. I've seen there was a period of really, really high VC investment into the beauty space, where so many brands were given so much money to launch, and nobody was basically asked to care about anything except for revenue growth.
Yep.
And so a lot of the brands that we work with creator brands, are some of those brands where all of a sudden investors were asking them to be
Mm,
profitable and to
yeah.
reduce their cogs, and to, and basically get to an operational standard that they were like never held to before. And so basically plugging into a machine like Volition that can help them do all of that was kind of helpful and really meaningful to them surviving without this this boon of like VC funding that kind of got behind beauty brands and just generally like D2C brands
Mhm.
over the past,
Definitely. So I'm going to ask you what's maybe a hard question. Put on your venture capitalist hat from, more than a decade ago. Would would you be investing in beauty brands today?
Mm. At a certain stage, I
Mhm.
would. I think, uh, I think it takes a really long time to build any brand.
Yeah.
And so,
So true.
I think there are exceptions to the rule when you see a step change in channels to market, or certain marketing channels, et cetera, where you can have a breakaway brand that gets to 300 million, $400 million of revenue like in 5 years. But I don't think that that's at all representative of the consumer brand building space. So depending on what the VC's timeline is, if it's an evergreen fund, I would say, maybe, right? Like if it's a standard VC 5 to 6 year, investment period, 10-year life, I would say, I would probably be investing on the later stages, rather than the 1 million, $2 million, beauty brands. I think those brands are great for angel investors who, perhaps are looking for more diversification outside of, the normal portfolio channels, or, maybe thinking more about like capital preservation, as opposed to like a big exit. But yeah. So I guess I'm saying like depends. Like, am I investing as an angel investor? Then yeah, absolutely. I think you can, depending on what your goals are, you should absolutely look at some beauty brands. Are you investing as a institutional VC that's looking to exit in 4 years? That's tougher.
It's so true. Building a brand takes a really, really long time, and there aren't shortcuts to that. I completely agree. And so I think that it's it's really hard to break out. Of course, brands do break out, but I think that as an investor, you have to be able to be patient, right?
Absolutely.
If it's a race, it's not aligned with what it really takes.
Yeah. 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 Absolutely. Yeah. You know more. You know a lot more about that. I feel like I've been out of the investing game for a while.
No, no, but you're in the trenches on the brand side. Now, okay, so one more question on creator brands. So creator brands has acquired brands as well, right?
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, part of it was really, as I was saying, some of these brands, like they needed all of this operational help. The founders weren't founders who enjoyed the the back end
Yeah.
of it. Didn't like where it just didn't, and they found themselves running these brands and being up to their eyeballs and all of this like operational work that, yeah, just wasn't exciting to them. So, some of the brands have come to us and said, "Hey, like you guys run this, like why don't
Mhm.
would you consider buying us out and then turning me, the founder, into a partner where I get to do what I love to do, whether it's weigh in on product development, or help us think about innovation or market, or continue to talk to her community and her followers about the brand, whatever it is, but basically take a lot of that weight off of their shoulders
Mhm.
that honestly was making them unhappy and then making the
Yeah.
brands not thrive. And so, all of a sudden being able to have a team that they can call when things go wrong, or when retailers are breathing down their neck, or when lawyers need to get involved and they're just kind of like, "Hey, can you guys handle that?" Like that was such, I think, a relief for so many of the founders that we were working with, that some of them were like, I think we should rethink how we're thinking about this partnership. And so, yeah, so some of those brands we would acquire. The founders, of course, stay on because they
Yeah,
are the lifeblood
that's right. They have to. Yeah.
of those brands for us. And then we structure it so that, it's just, it's less risky for them. Like, I will say that, so many times I feel like founders are the first ones to stop paying themselves when the brand doesn't do
Yeah.
well. And honestly, I also think it's a female thing. It's like a woman thing. Like, you sacrifice yourself before
Mhm.
anybody else, and they just immediately like stop paying themselves. So a lot of the time, some of these brands, great sales, but like weren't making a profit. The founders weren't paying themselves. And
Mhm.
what we're able to do is, because we flip them into like, now we manage the company, we own the cash flow, we're on the hook for all of that. We get to pay them a commission, a revenue share, a profit share, whatever, however we strike the deal. They're all different. That ensures that they
Yeah.
basically continue to be able to pay their bills while we handle all the tricky cash flow stuff.
I think it's so cool. I think that, like I was saying before, breaking out is so hard. And at the same time, I feel like given between, all your, whether it's marketing expenses or team expenses, like being a subscale brand is extremely challenging and probably borderline not sustainable. And so I feel like what you guys are doing in creator brands is solving that problem in a really creative and mutually beneficial way.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, I I wonder, so hard to run a company. It is like so hard where like
Oh,
I would
yeah.
say I can't understand like how some people like without business school, without banking, like all of these experiences that I've had, over the past 25 years of my career, like, I don't know how they do it, but some of them are amazing at it, right? But even I'm still figuring it out, you know?
Mm,
And I have a team of people who are much smarter than me, right, as well. And I'm still like I'm still overwhelmed sometimes. So it definitely is a head scratcher for me that some people can handle all of that on their own sometimes. And
definitely.
and and definitely a relief when we start working with them, I think, and they start seeing what it feels like to actually have resources and have help and have experts in each area, to ask questions,
Yes.
where they're like, oh wait, well, I don't know, but when was Amazon Prime Day? I didn't even know about that. I'm like,
Right.
okay, well,
Right.
go talk to the Amazon team and they'll figure it out for you and they'll help you.
Exactly. And being able to like focus on that superpower, that
Hmm.
founder creator superpower, which is so
Exactly.
unique.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay. So I have a last question for you. This has been amazing.
Okay.
So I think, there are so many people out there who I talk to who are really interested in founding a beauty or wellness brand and who look at you and think that's what I want to do. What would your advice be to them?
Ooh, interesting. That's a tough one. I feel like I've been given so much advice over the years that I'm trying to think what the most meaningful piece of it was. I mean, I guess I would say like choose the people around you wisely, right? And whether it's your initial angel investors or it's your first hire or whether it's like your first supplier,
Mhm.
like I feel like, a lot of entrepreneurs, they're entrepreneurs because they have this unmitigated sense of urgency and they're successful at it. And that's part of what has like driven their success. They like, we just want to get stuff done like now. Right. And I think that can lead to kind of some hasty decisions when it comes to who you surround yourself with and also your when you're starting a company, everything feels so overwhelming that can be sort of the time where people come at you who don't quite have the like right intentions or like right aligned in terms of priorities and like what you're building.
Yeah.
So I would just say, yeah, I feel like take your time when it comes to that. I feel like for me, I was like very lucky because before I became an entrepreneur, I had decades of actually work experience. So I kind of knew who to call and like I was surrounded by people with, who I would work with in some capacity or the other. But if I didn't have that, I think I would definitely say just be careful like who you choose and who you surround yourself with, because that definitely determines your path forward in so many ways.
I think that is terrific advice. Definitely. Thank you so much, Patricia. This has
You're
been
welcome. This is
fantastic.
so fun.
So fun to chat with you. Thank you.
Thanks.
If you love this episode, find more at cxtinvestments.com and follow me on LinkedIn, Tina Bou-Saba.